unless you guys desperately want to talk about the 2 released Alien shorts thus far. I'm going to guess that's
just about the Joker.
It's kind of cool. Like, I can watch it, but I don't have to share it with anyone. You know? It's like an Alien verse that no one can criticize.
Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
What would you do if you had $1 million?
I'll tell you what I'd do, man. 2 chicks at the same time, man.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. S-M-R-T. S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
You're that sweaty carpenter who hates me.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net, everyone's a critic podcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle is CriticsPod. There you can watch our trailers, read Sean's reviews, interact, and whatever else you do on those sites. Follow us, like us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and all your podcatchers. Subscribe, rate and review the show. We will read your reviews on the air. And then Patreon, IHateCritics.net/Patreon if you want to help support the podcast. If you need to update your card information, please do so. We also have the PayPal link if you'd rather be a supporter that way. Either way, you can get a credit on the show. And then there's our podcast merch at IHateCritics.net and click on the podcast merch link or tab and take a picture of whatever you buy and we'll share it. And
except the thongs. If you buy the thongs, maybe don't take a picture of us or have somebody else take a picture. Or the glowing condoms. I mean, we don't need to see everything that you buy from us, but some.
Or you can. I don't care.
We don't have our 900 line set up yet. So.
I mean, Instagram might take it down, but... this week, we got one trailer, The Joker.
Yeah, the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, and an experimental thing going on here for sure, with trying to find the origin of evil in the Joker, and interesting premise, well executed, and of course I absolutely, completely trust Joaquin Phoenix as arguably in the last year and a half he's kind of usurped my my Jake Gyllenhaal love. Like, I think he may be the best working actor today based off of his most recent work.
I really loved the trailer because it gave us a little something different, but then I started to feel a little familiar with it, and for good reason. As I was thinking about it, like, didn't I just see this sometime recently? I was telling Beth about, the King of Comedy, and then all of a sudden I see the next day there's an interview with Robert De Niro in which he says, if some of you were thinking that, well, that's intentional. And at some point they actually talked to, he said, if the producers would have brought that to me as a continuation of that story, I would have said yes. Which is very interesting because I expected the Joker kind of payoff out of that movie. Never happened, but here we have what will be the payoff. So to me, it looks like a remake of that movie almost in every way. I mean, you can take the character out of the clown context or whatever and put him into this, and it works just fine. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The only thing that gets me a little down on it, if anything, is just that I haven't liked any of Todd Phillips' movies. So for him to be the director of something great, I don't know about that, but...
And I would say he has been the director of something great. Several things great. So I trust him completely with something like this. And I don't know, De Niro against Joaquin Phoenix, it's exciting. I even think Mark Maron's in it. So
yes,
I'm looking forward to this. And the cool thing about the Joker is he doesn't really have an origin story. I mean, you got the Killing Joke, I guess. But for the most part, every movie's done a little differently. And it's kind of cool that they're just doing their own thing. And I don't know. I'm interested. But yeah, that's our news. That's our trailers. So we'll move right into the episode. And we'll start with the most successful movie of the week, Shazam.
Yes, Shazam, starring Zachary Levi. He's, of course, the star of Chuck and also the Squeakquel, the Chipmunks. Squeakquel? Yeah. I'm not going to let that one go, Zach. I'm sorry. He's playing the character of Shazam, the grown-up version of Billy Batson. There's a 14, 15-year-old kid who is chosen by a wizard named Shazam to take on his powers and become him and become the essence of his powers and battle evil. Evil in this case is the 7 deadly sins inside of a guy who's I guess he's a doctor. I'm not sure exactly what that guy does, because Mark Strong is probably the biggest problem with this movie. But overall, this is a really fun kind of amalgam of a superhero movie and Tom Hanks and Big. Like it brings together those ideas: a kid with magic powers who can become an adult, and with an adult superhero who can do just about anything, and then he can go back. He's still got the mentality of a kid, and Zachary Levi does a great job of capturing that spirit of being a child in a situation where he's desperately over his head and having to make big adult decisions in big moments. And I think the film kind of lingers a little bit too long on his incompetence. I just want to kind of get to the point. Like I understand you made your point well there about showing him being incompetent and failing. Can we get to the point now? But that's not a major problem. That's just kind of a minor issue. The bigger issue is that this is a really weak villain, and this is kind of a continuing problem with the DC universe, is that they don't do well with villains. They tend to stumble when it comes to coming up with a villain that's got a good backstory and it's got a good motivation and is consistently interesting. And Strong, he's a good actor, but he's a charisma void. He doesn't have any essence to him. There's no life behind his eyes, and I couldn't invest in him as a character, even disliking him enough to care about him. And that's really the only issue I have. I think the movie's very funny, and I think Zachary Levi is really great. And I think this is on the upper end of the DC movies, right? I think it ranks well next to Aquaman and well below Wonder Woman. Even I would say, for my taste, below Batman and Superman, because I did like that movie. But this is fine. This is good. This is way better than Suicide Squad. So they're on the right track here, and I do like the movie enough.
According to the critics, it's better than Captain Marvel as well, by a lot.
No.
The critical scores are very. I mean, it's in the 90s, and Captain Marvel's in the 70s. Critically, not viewers. Because you know how that goes.
I'm not going to argue with that at all. I actually really like Shazam, and I agree that it's a weak villain. But then again, I kind of forgot about him and was focusing more on the grossness of the 7 deadly sins as they come to life. And I was focusing on how well they did the special effects of them materializing from smoke into a physical presence. But overall, it stayed consistent throughout. It consistently above average, which, okay, our bar is a little low. If we go into a DC movie, we're not expecting a whole lot. For me, I wasn't expecting much out of the director, David Sandberg. Without much of a resume behind him, all I could think of was that he was visually effective enough to get into the Conjuring verse for James Wan.
He did Lights Out, and he did Annabelle Creation.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know that you liked Lights Out. I don't remember if you saw that one or not, Bob, or maybe you didn't like Lights Out. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think you're mixing that up with you're mixing it up with the Blind Guy movie, I think.
Yeah.
Lights
yes,
Out, I think,
am.
is a different one.
Yes.
Okay, for clarification's sake, then, my confidence was low. That's the whole point of this. And Zachary Levi is fine, actually, is Shazam, Captain Marvel, whatever you want to call him. They don't really call him anything but the names he's not in this movie. And they never do get to Captain Marvel, which is fine. I'm not interested in that feud. I think it's funny that they came out within a month of each other.
I will say, when I said that just now, I didn't even think that.
Uh-huh.
They just happened to be next to each other on Rotten Tomatoes. So that was why I brought them up to each other.
But I do think there is some sort of long-standing feud, which one came first and which one should have the name. I can't even remember which way it goes because I don't care. And I came to this a little blind because I never read Shazam in comic form. It was a character that I always thought looked a little goofy, and plus the exclamation point after the name, and then just the name itself made it seem to me like it was for littler kids, and it's not, though. And I like that this movie introduced me to some mythology that I didn't know. So therefore, it wasn't just going over the same old story that I know, that, two parents are going to get killed in an alley, or they both have the same mom's name, All in all, I find that this is a step in the real right direction. And Mark Strong, you know what? I'm looking at it. He doesn't really have much to go on, period. But I've liked him before. I think it was probably because of Layer Cake. And I did like him as Sinestro in Green Lantern. But that movie's got many problems on its own. So I do hope that this does well. I didn't actually see the numbers on it.
I don't have it in front of me, but before I will in a second. But from what I was told, it's a lot darker than the trailer.
It most definitely is. The way that I saw it is that they were trying so hard for gags that there wasn't going to be a lot of dark stuff in this, okay? And that they had tried purposely with Aquaman to bring a little color and joy into everything. But it is kind of dark. I don't want to say gory, but in terms of the fact that you've got a lot of family dynamics that are sadder family dynamics. In the Seven Deadly Sins, you've got to address that. I mean, we're talking about hell here and demons and things of that nature. So not as lighthearted, I think, is the trailer suggested, but certainly nothing along the lines of Hellboy.
Well, right.
I mean, the new Hellboy's rated R, but
the trailer does make it look like it's for kids. And from what my brother went and saw it, and there was a little, probably my son's age, crying, asking his dad if they could leave in the theater. And then his daughter was a little scared too. I mean, it's PG-13, so there's that, but the trailer does give it off to look more goofy than it is. Apparently it is, but it still sounds like it's pretty goofy in some aspects as well.
Yeah, I thought the goofiness really stood out far more than any of the darker aspects. There's one scene that there's a boardroom scene that's kind of like the boardroom scene in Dogma, a little bit. Not as bloody, but you get the sense of what's happening in there.
In fairness, Dogma just turns the camera away and
right.
you see blood.
Well, that's
kind
of what this does. That's kind of what happens here.
Yeah, I actually thought that was, of all of the scenes in the film, the one scene that could really have affected a younger viewer. There was definitely somebody younger than 4 in the crowd that I could hear periodically.
He said something about eyes or something. That's what scared this little kid. I don't really know.
Mark Strong's eyes, where he keeps the 7 deadly sins.
Okay.
Yeah, and it kind of gets inserted into his eye. All of the creatures and their, wispy spirits go into his eye. But on the whole, I really recommend Shazam, and I hope that it does well. This is the kind of thing that if you don't take it too seriously, you could really enjoy. It has some good dynamics between the foster kids in this one home, and they don't ever take it too far, so it's not super cheesy. But there's not a lot of gravity in the whole thing, I guess, which makes it consistent, and I liked it like that.
It definitely has a weird place, though. If this is indeed part of the, or which I guess it is part of the broader DC universe, it does have a weird spot in it where, and I don't want to spoil anything, but when you take all of the characters that are going to have to be now involved moving forward, on top of all the characters you already have, it gets kind of crowded.
I would agree with that. And anyone that has read the comics will know what you're talking about.
Right.
Some cursory investigation. One of the characters' name is the same as... yeah, and so I'm like, oh, well, they're not originally related, so they must have gotten together and had some super sex. But I'm looking forward to that sequel. There are 2 extra credits, like a mid-credits one and a post-credits one that is kind of funny. I don't know if you caught that or not.
I did catch that, and then the mid-credits scene made no sense to me at all. I don't know who that character is, and I really have no interest in it whatsoever.
Neither do I. I don't quite get that one, and they don't show...
I do... This is weird. So... I watched the Shazam cartoon as a child. There was a Shazam cartoon. I was about 8 years old when it was on the air, I think. And they were working at a circus. And Shazam wasn't Billy Batson. He was just Shazam. And Billy Batson was his own character. And he had a grandfather and I think a monkey. And a girl. There was a girl. I'm recalling this all from memory, so I could be getting this wrong, but but the character who's in the mid-credit scene is in it, and he is, I think, I can't remember if he's a bad guy or not in the cartoon.
Certainly seems like he's scheming in some way for as much as he can scheme. I hate to say all of this when you haven't seen it, but
It's okay. Up until this year or late last year, I didn't know who Shazam was. I didn't know who Captain Marvel was. I didn't even have the memory of Sinbad being in a make-believe movie called Shazam. I had none of that. Makes sense to me. Even the Shaquille O'Neal thing. Or
Kazam!
That never even...
Oh, is that part of the DC universe?
No, but interestingly, Shaq did play a character called Steel,
yeah.
which is a DC character. But if they ever do John Henry Irons again, they won't get Shaq, thank God.
The cool thing, my son wasn't all that excited. I mean, he was back and forth, but he ultimately decided he didn't really care that much. So we didn't go see it. It did make $57 million through today, I guess, which is Monday on a $100 million budget. So it's, plus marketing. So it'll make its money back and then some.
Seems like it. I mean, I think it is totally worth it, and it's a worthy comic book entry. I mean, if you went and saw it, Bob, I think you would at least say, like, I wasn't bored.
Right. I mean, I'm sure at some point I'll end up seeing it, whether it's most likely it'll probably be on demand somewhere.
Sure.
Because if you don't see the first week, what's the point anymore? Best of Enemies.
Best of Enemies. Yes, this is a true story, based on a true story about a Klan leader in Durham, North Carolina, named C.P. Ellis, and a black activist by the name of Ann. Well, here's the problem with the movie is that she gets shoved to the background so much that you kind of can. Ann Atwater, sorry, it's played by Taraji P. Henson. C.P. Ellis, played by Sam Rockwell. She gets pushed to the side so often in this movie that you're kind of looking for her. You spend your time kind of wondering when they're going to give her some time here, and it's really strange because seems like the marketing campaign has been built around this relationship, and it should be because the center of the movie should be the fact that these two people who were so diametrically opposed end up in life being the closest of friends going forward. And we're going to see how that came about, sort of. Because this is a weird, bad movie that actually, this is going to be hard for people to hear, but this movie approaches something that is very disturbing to me, and that is that it comes up to this point of not all Klansmen. If you get what I mean. It really borders on the idea of not all Klansmen, and that is really disturbing.
Sean, there are good people on both sides.
And there's bad people on both sides.
C.P. Ellis, I mean, they really let him off the hook a lot on anything he did before this took place. 1971, they're trying to integrate schools in Durham, North Carolina. The school, a black school, had burned, had caught fire, and the kids needed a place to go. They wanted to go to the white school. White people didn't want them to. So they proposed this thing. This judge proposes this thing called a chalet, where they're going to have to come together and as a community, and they're going to come up with an idea of how to either make this happen or figure out another way to serve these students. And they decide that the best way to do this, they need the two people who are most diametrically opposed in the argument to be committee leaders. And so C.P. Ellis, the head of the Klan, and a black activist, Ann Atwater, have to work together as the heads of this committee. And both sides are going to maneuver to try and get their votes. And that's an interesting idea, but the movie doesn't carry it off well. It spends so much time trying to rehab any opinion you might have of C.P. Ellis and try and put him in more of a human context than he's just this evil Klan guy. And it works so hard on that aspect that you get really uncomfortable with how much they're trying to rehab him, all this time that they're putting into rehabbing him as a human being. And that's really weird. That loses the perspective on Ann Atwater completely, and she's a just as interesting, if not more interesting, character. But she's reduced to basically just glowering or being, or just being benevolent in a way that is beyond simply benevolent. It's weird. It's a weird approach. It's very reminiscent of a late 80s, early 90s approach to this type of material, and really we've left that approach behind years ago. But this is very much like there's Odie Henderson of the RogerEbert.com did an amazing review of this that is extraordinarily raw and honest and hates this movie a great deal.
A lot of critics did.
Yeah, deservedly so. He's absolutely right. Because like I said, it edges up to that line where you could say that this is not all Klansmen. And that is really a horrific line for any movie to even consider approaching. And it's really unfortunate because this is actually a true story. These two people did come together and become very close friends, and in the most unlikely fashion, to where he ended up speaking at her funeral. Like, that's how close they became. So that's really interesting. But this movie, the way they approach this story is so messed up. It is so just such a ridiculously bad perspective, trying to spend all their time trying to rehab him into somebody you can care about. Just be honest about it.
Right.
That's how he and Ann Atwater became friends, is that being that honest with each other.
Well, there's a theory that's going around lately. I mean, it's probably always been there, but it's never been more dominant than right now. Is, people as a group are assholes, but individually they're decent people. So you can show that. You can show pulling a guy out of the group and show what it's like having a conversation, and you don't have to sit here and rehab the guy. And yeah, that's not, you would have gotten there on your own, and it would have been much more. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's really disappointing too, because I thought this looked good based on the and I mean, I like Sam Rockwell and I like Taraji P. Henson. This should have been a good movie. That's really a bummer. But yeah, I saw the critics were tearing it apart. It's the worst reviewed movie of the week based on Rotten Tomatoes.
Deservedly so.
Really? The Mustang.
The Mustang, yes, executive produced by Robert Redford, but not directed by him. I should point out this is a first-time director approaching this. Matthias Schoenaerts is the star here as a guy who's in prison. He's been in prison for about he's going on 12 years in prison. He's been a problem guy for a long time. He basically does his best to stay in solitary confinement because he doesn't like being around people. He doesn't want to face up to how he got to where he is. We're going to come to find out how he got to where he is eventually. But what's going to happen is that he gets transferred to this prison. I believe it's in Wyoming, where he's on a sort of a farm. It's a prison farm, and on this farm are wild Mustangs. And what they do is the prisoners are able to work with the Mustangs to try and break them down so that they can be sold at auction and cared for. And because the wild Mustang population is being run out of every corner of the country by the continuing expansion of humans. So they're trying to get all these horses together and find a way to protect them. And that's how they do it, is break them down and try and make them saleable. Naturally, of course, this leads you to something that is very familiar, where he's going to get involved with this particular horse that's the hardest horse there is to deal with. He's got a spirit that can't be broken. He's wild and free, and he wants to escape. And, of course, that's going to represent his soul and his spirit, and the two of them coming together is going to be his healing and the Mustang healing and so on and so forth. And it really pushes right up to that line of being, okay, we get it. We get what you're doing here. Yes, okay. Thankfully, Matthias Schoenaerts plays it so relaxed, and he doesn't lean into it too much as the director is really leaning into that idea. He's pulling back as much as he can and trying to hold back and not be careful.
Trying to keep your eyes from rolling all the way.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to keep it real, and I appreciated his performance. His performance really levens out the whole aspect of it being of the overly touched upon metaphor. So it never gets annoying. It's something you're taking note of throughout, but it never gets annoying because of him. There's a great story arc with he and his daughter, and coming to terms with the things that he did that led him to be in prison, and about what he'd like to accomplish if he ever were to leave prison. And so there's a solid story there, and like you said, his performance really pulls it together. The metaphor is more than a little thick, but I got over it, and I do like this movie.
It was reviewed very well as well. I don't know why. This week I decided to look at Rotten Tomatoes. Another movie that wasn't reviewed horribly, it's like sitting there right there in the fresh to rotten, like right at 60%. Pet Sematary. I spent way too much time with this subject this week. Read the book, watched both movies.
You read the entire book?
Audiobook. But
okay.
Still, I mean, it's 15 hours.
I read 75, 80 pages of it or whatnot just to refresh myself with some of the material from when I was a teenager.
Yeah, oddly enough, Stephen King calls it his scariest book in his mind.
I'm with him, but alas.
Anyway, we'll get there, but we'll start with the new movie first.
Yes, Pet Sematary. The only reason this is not worse than Best of Enemies was because it doesn't approach not all Klansman levels of stupid. So the idea here is, of course, it's a remake of the '89 movie with some updated touches, but the idea is that these. Well, get ready. Are you ready for this? Because this is going to surprise you. This is going to surprise you guys. It's a family from Maine. I know you never see that before in a Stephen King story, but it's a family from Maine. They are apparently they've met with and been sold by the worst realtor on the planet, who has set them up with this beautiful home right on the edge of Death Highway and next to the gateway to hell between life and death.
With really bad acoustics, because I live on Death Highway, as does my friend. You can hear cars coming from a mile away. I'm just saying. In this movie, they come out of nowhere. But anyway, continue.
So they've got hell on one side and they've got the Death Highway on the other side, and they've been dumb enough to buy this house and move in. The plot kicks in with their cat getting hit by a car and killed, but then brought back to life when John Lithgow takes him out to the gateway between life and death and has him bury the cat there, and the cat comes back to life, but it's not the same cat. He's now Evil Cat. And even so, the evil cat comes back and he scratches the kid, and he's just mean and disturbing and supposed to be scary, I guess. Never, it's a fucking cat, but nevertheless, they mean it to be scary. And idiot doctor guy, played by Jason Clarke, decides, well, instead of just putting the cat down, which is what I should have done, and just buried it correctly and not done all this bullshit, now seeing how evil it is, I should just put it down and put it in the ground. Instead, he just lets it go. And that leads to the other thing that happens in the movie that leads to the bigger stupid tragedy and basically just starts the third act. These are idiot characters doing idiot things, but it's a plot that just doesn't care. And it's a pair of directors who apparently just don't care. The approach here is so incredibly mediocre. Because I want to sit here and say how much I hate this movie or how bad it is. Really, the thing that pisses me off is that it's terrible in all the wrong ways. It's terrible in most uninteresting ways. It's terrible in ways that aren't very, like boring performances, no mediocre jump scares, mediocre special effects. There's nothing that's really interestingly bad. Like, give me Suicide Squad anytime, because that is at least an ambitiously bad movie where they make stupid choices, but they were bold about their stupid choices, and I can talk about that. There's not much to talk about with the mediocre, boring choices that this movie makes.
Yeah, and I guess I'll kind of ignore what you said. And I'll try to just give you my experience with it, because, like I said, I liked the book for a while, like a long time, and then I almost had the opposite of Hereditary experience. Like, me and Josh may totally be on the other end of it again, where it's like, you could have gone a different direction with this book, and this would have been
I discovered
phenomenal.
That it's not as well thought of as I remember.
It is a great book until the third act. And even then, it's like, okay, I guess I just don't like what it is, but you could have gone somewhere here, or you could have ended it and it would have just been phenomenal. What the movies, both of them for that matter, struggle with is they don't got time to develop anything. They don't develop the friendship between Judd and Lewis. They just kind of, it's there. The cat's not evil in the book, which is why he doesn't kill the cat in the book. There's just a lot of, I don't know, what I will say, though, is this is a more consistent movie. You know, things happen in the book that aren't consistent. What this movie did was take everything I don't like about the book and everything I like about the book. They removed the stuff I liked and brought all the stuff I didn't like and made a really consistent, run-of-the-mill horror movie that's fine. Oddly enough, critics like it better than fans. I think it's because this movie is going to struggle with the fact that it's not like the book and it's not like the 89 movie. They went in a kind of a weird direction with it. In some ways, it's cool, but at the same time, you're playing to that audience already, not the new audience. You know, the whole surprise death is more going to shock you if you read the book or saw the 89 movie. That said, you kind of see it in the trailer anyway, so it's not that impressive. But they only do it for those people, not for the audience watching it for the first time with no connection to either story. So to me, that's kind of pointless and not bold by any means. So Sean's right on that aspect. But I do think it's consistent. I don't think the performances are bad per se. They just don't develop anything. They just kind of do a pretty straightforward horror movie, and it works for what it's doing. But I'm where I don't like what it's doing, so I can't really review the movie honestly, because there is a phenomenal story here. You know, dealing with the idea of you can bring a child back from the dead, and getting in that mental headspace that they have to get into. That's a really interesting topic that neither movie even attempts to invest in. It's just, and they don't have time, in fairness to it. So at that point, it's just like, well, maybe Stephen King just needs to be like an American Horror Story type thing and take his books and do that with it, and not ruin those as well. Those suck too. But, give it a season and let these stories breathe a little bit, because I don't know. I think that would have worked so much better. Here, you're moving so fast. You have to get rid of things that are really cool. Neither movie has Judd's wife in it, which is one of the most important parts of the book. And I don't know. But again, I feel like if I watched it again, which I'm not going to, I would like it better because I can know what it is and I can just watch it for what it is. The same way you can it's kind of like, it's the equivalent of like what Big Daddy is to comedy. This is to horror movies. So it works on that level if you really, it's competent, it's consistent, it makes sense. But if you never saw it, you're not missing anything.
Let me ask you this. The thing that really, the part that really annoyed me is this throwaway BS about the wife and her sister. And why that is introduced in any way. It has no basis in any part of this story. Why she's being haunted. And then having that come back and be important. She's not part of the main plot. She's not part of his plot. She's not part of the burying the cat plot. She's not part of the burying the daughter plot. She's out of all of that. And yet the entire time, she's being haunted. And so is the house cursed? I mean, they don't establish any of that. They don't do anything with that. Do they do something with that in the book?
Yes, in the book they do. In the movies, both movies for that matter, she's a monster. And which bugged me, because in the book, she's just a person with, on her deathbed, and as you're getting closer and closer to death, you're miserable. And when you're in a bad mood, are you not a dick? I mean, we all are. And when you're not feeling good and you're not, and I mean, one of my best friends, and I shouldn't say that, one of my friend's best friends in college, he had cancer, and towards the end, he was really mean to his mom. He was on the, but he wasn't all there. It was on his way out, and that's a natural, normal thing, and that's what happens in the book. In both movies, it's like a monster child, and in this new one, it's strictly used for jump scares. They're effective jump scares if you've never seen a horror movie before, or you're into that kind of. But that's the majority. I mean, obviously our listeners aren't that audience, but I mean, I'm not kidding. It really is like what Big Daddy is to a comedy. This is to horror, and again, competent, straightforward, mediocre, I guess, as Sean said. And that's kind of why you can't say it just kind of is what it is.
It's really too bad though, because the way that they marketed this to me was speaking to the book a little bit more, especially not just the fact that they used the font from the original edition of the book for the title, but it mattered to me. That font choice, for whatever reason, it was freaking me out, because every time I went to open up that book at 13, I just I had a little trepidation to that. I read it in 1992, like a month or so after my grandma passed away. It was the first person in my life that had passed away that I'd known, right? And so I've got it in my mind, these confusing ideas about death, which the book plays with a whole bunch. and you start to ask yourself, oh, well, what would I do? What can we really say? And that's the psychology of this whole idea, is really where the horror is at, not the literal zombie action of somebody crawling out of a graveyard. Sure, that's gross, but we've already envisioned that a few pages before when they've decided to do
Which
that.
is not really in the book till the very end.
Yeah.
Because the cat's just kind of there. It
Yeah.
smells bad, and to me, you end it when his son comes out, still looking like he got hit by a truck, and now you have to decide, what do you do? Then you end the movie, or you make him decide what he's going to do. Make him put his son down or something like that, or hug him, or whatever it is. End it there, and not have him kill everybody. And, I mean, and in fairness, I could see why he wrote this book and then put it away instead of never releasing it. I mean, it sat in his drawer. He wrote a very long foreword that I listened to. And I think it sat there, and he finally owed whoever another book, and he just pulled it out and said, is this any good? Because he didn't like where his mind went at the end, and it scared him. But to me, that it was inconsistent when it did that. The movie, though, there were a couple things that bugged me about it, in just kind of laziness. Like I talked about the highway, the fact that you don't hear a truck speeding its ass off coming a mile away. It just pops out of nowhere behind a tree. 2, there's kids in the woods playing with masks on. They're going to bury their pet or a farm animal or whatever it is. This is not scary. No. But they put some scary music behind it and a little drum and masks on to make it look scary, to make the mom look scared. And I'm just like, but they're not hearing that music. Yeah, this wouldn't scare them. They just see kids in the woods burying a farm animal.
And this isn't really the behavior of normal children. I don't think normal children do stuff like this. Even if you have to be raised for this kind of weird tradition in a cult.
Well, I also don't think those kids are necessarily taking this to the zombie cemetery.
They're not. They're taking it to the regular pet cemetery.
Which, it probably wouldn't be kids anyway. But even if it was, even if they were raised, they're farm kids or whatever in Maine, that's all it was. It was not a scary scene that they tried to play for scares. And I don't know. It's just part of the other thing about I listened to the audiobook Dexter Morgan. Dexter read it, which made it that much better. For sure. He would have been perfect for Jason Clark's role.
Yeah, Jason Clark, I got a lot of talking to do. He's just so disappointing. He's just incredibly disappointing. Everything he makes these days is so bad. It's just so bad, and I don't understand. Where's the guy who made Dawn of the Planet of the Apes? He was really great in that movie.
Yeah, it speaks to directing a movie, I suppose, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of proof now that Jason Clarke isn't a very good actor. I think that's pretty much what we can call it.
I mean, yeah.
Matt Reeves is a hell of a director, though.
Yeah, that is accurate. That's accurate.
Let's just not make sure that he doesn't become Batman because they're desperate to find somebody or something.
Let's stay with 89 Pet Sematary so we don't have to break it up, and we'll get to 89 movies later, but we'll stay with Pet Sematary, that one. Josh, you want to lead that one?
Yeah, this one stars Dale Midkiff of... Does anybody remember the show Time Tracks in the early 90s? Fucking loved that show.
Wasn't he on, like you said, some,
of course you did.
Really bad, Cinemax movies or something, wasn't he?
Undoubtedly. But this show was like... If sci-fi today would have existed then, they would have had Time Tracks as a show. Now, I liked it because it involved time travel, and he had a cute little robot or whatever. But
if only he had that in this movie.
Right. Well, he does. She's Denise Crosby, former star of Star Trek The Next Generation as Lieutenant Tasha Yar. Actually, she was my favorite part of that show, and then when that show killed her character off, it was actually very effective for a 10-year-old watching something.
Not so much in this movie.
Not so much. And then people that recognize Miko Hughes, the little kid from Kindergarten Cop that says the things that he's not supposed to say. He's Gage, the little kid. I'll never understand. There are a number of people as I was going into college, like the people that weren't, like I worked with people at Pizza Hut or whatever at that time, and a couple of them had kids that they named Gage, and I was like, oh, like the Pet Sematary kid? And they're like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay. Then they would later name a son Damien, and then I started to understand what they were going for.
Reagan.
Right. But it's the same story, except for the fact that instead of, in the new version, the trailer shows you that the older daughter, Ellie, gets killed. In this case, it's Gage gets killed because his father's an idiot, and not only turns his back for way too long of a time, but the kid also doesn't hear very well. The parents don't hear very well. This large truck with the guy, I don't know. The whole thing is kind of a mess, and it doesn't capture the spirit of the book at all, really. The cat is weird looking already. Those kind of cats are the only cats that freak me out. But this one is done in such a terrible way, it just doesn't resonate for me. The kills in it are very cheap. The sister on the bed is kind of like a goofy makeup. It's comical when it shouldn't be, and that's super unfortunate. Fred Gwynne as Judd Crandall, when I read the book, I knew the movie Pet Sematary existed. My mom would tell me about Fred Gwynne from past films and shows that she had seen. So I kind of put that face in the book already. He's going to be Judd Crandall for me no matter what. I like that they cast him as it, but then again, he doesn't have a lot to do either compared to the book, and that's really unfortunate. The book's relationship that develops between the Doctor and Judd Crandall is this wonderful father-son dynamic that somebody that doesn't have a father figure in their life, even the book spells it out for you. I didn't know that I was going to see a father figure later in life or whatever. Neither of the movies, it seems like, expounds upon that.
But
and that's
what
really
makes
unfortunate.
what's weird about these movies is that, but he shows up at birthday parties and he's close in certain scenes, but they never develop it and show. I mean, they spend a lot of time just in the book, him going over there for a beer every night. I mean, there's a lot of time in that, and so in both movies, it's kind of creepy at times how close he is to the family with no real setup, but at the same time, not as close. So it's just weird.
Yeah, the 89 version, it's shot cheaply. There's no real scares that I can remember. And then to throw it all together, you've got two very unenthusiastic leads, not really selling you on fear or sorrow or grief, any of the emotions we would expect out of these characters. They're not giving us that, and that's unfortunate. And then we've got the end of the movie has a Ramones song for some reason playing over the credits.
It's in the book a lot.
What's that?
They reference that Ramones song throughout the book.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah.
What did I... Oh, okay.
Well, you just read
Great.
70 pages of it.
Yeah.
Really,
Okay.
about halfway through, once Gage dies, they reference the song a lot.
That show, I didn't know who the Ramones were until I was about 20 years old. Point is, I guess it makes sense now that song is in there. I thought that it was a song specifically made for the movie, like one of those times where they hire an artist and say, no matter what, you've got to get the title of the movie into your song.
Well, to be honest, I don't. What is a song called "Pet Cemetery" that the Ramones did?
I don't know.
I don't remember. I don't remember the song because I watched it and I don't know. I didn't stick to the credits. There is a Ramones song in the book they reference. I don't know if it's the same song.
Okay.
I shouldn't say maybe, but yeah, I didn't see this as a kid, so it never. When I did finally see it at 20 something, I thought it sucked, but people loved this movie. Even when I walked, the new one's far superior. It is mediocre and bland as it is far superior to the 89 movie. But I mean, walking out of the theater, the original was so much better. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. This one followed the book closer, but it just found beats in the book and then made a movie out of those beats with no setup, no time invested in it, and it just frustrated me watching it.
Yeah, and plus doing the whole playing around with Gage in the house and his silly little laughs and whatnot. It wasn't the creepy that maybe they were going for. It just comes off as comical, and I found myself laughing at the movie, and for whatever reason, someone thinks that this is great. More power to them.
I mean, I will say my daughter I was getting into the third act listening to it when I watched it, so I didn't know how it ended. I forgot because I had seen it, but it had been a while. My daughter had come down during the third act, walked downstairs, scared the piss out of her, and ran back up. So apparently it was effective for a certain age group, but just really disappointing because, and anytime you read a book, you can make it better than it is. And I do think in the book the third act sucks, but it just seemed like it could have been just something. I don't know. Just something you could have done with the way the mind works. And even if you do the supernatural stuff and how it pulls your mind a certain direction, that's fine too. Just don't go to hell with it. Literally, and that's me saying this. Someone who
very interesting.
And with Hereditary as a comparison, that at least was a constant build. It wasn't it didn't just change. I mean, there's an inconsistency in the book. There's not an inconsistency in Hereditary. It just builds towards that. This one, the book does. It's inconsistent. And then the new ones are consistent, but it just pulled all the shit I didn't like and made a movie out of it.
Yeah.
So
the song was written for the movie.
It was called Pet Sematary.
Yeah,
wasn't
Pet Sematary, written for the movie. It was actually the Ramones put it on an original album that they did. But it was at around the same time, called Brain Drain. But the song
Blitzkrieg Bop's in the book.
It came so it came about. They went. Stephen King's a big fan of the Ramones. He invited the Ramones up to play in New England, and while they were there, he gave Dee Dee Ramone a copy of Pet Sematary. He went downstairs and in an hour wrote that song based off of what he read.
Kind of a shitty song. You could tell he wrote it in an hour. But yeah, as I was saying, it was in the book. All this was kind of. I do remember reading something on Wikipedia about them having a song called Pet Sematary. But yeah, in the book it's Blitzkrieg Bop. He keeps referencing the "Hey Ho, Let's Go."
I hate this movie as much as I guess you guys do. I think Dale Midkiff is terrible. The whole cast is bad. I laugh at the little kid at the Gage. I laughed at him. I couldn't help it. He's adorable. He's an adorable killer.
I think he's the best thing about this movie, and good or bad. I mean, either the adorable part maybe is that's what it is. Maybe it's the fact that I recognize him, Kindergarten Cop. I don't know, but he is far and away though. He's even better than the Gage in the new one. He is the only thing better than the. I mean, I'm not. I don't know about you, but the new one is far superior to this movie, and the new one is just mediocre at best.
It's a low bar,
which is what makes Sean hate it even more. Is that it didn't? It's mediocre.
Yeah, but in '89, it's actually pulled in like $50 to $60 million in gross, which is obviously a clear profit, and led
this
them
one's
to make
on the way to that too.
A second
with
one.
Eddie Furlong.
I never saw it because I couldn't understand if you didn't have any of the principal characters involved. Why would you care? It's just going back to the area, right?
If they do a part 2 with this one, it would make sense.
Yeah.
The new one. I hate to say it does take a swing because I guess it's it's not really much of a swing. They changed the ending kind of completely. So if you want to see a little bit of a different story, there's that. But
the last thing that I can say about it, though, the actual ending to the book is it. I think it's because of who I was at that time, almost 13 years old, roughly. But the epilogue and the wife coming in and hand on the shoulder and darling, and it was written in italics. There was just something about the setup of that really bothered me. Like, I didn't think it was going to work, and it somehow did, and it just gave me the shivers for a while.
Yeah, and that I getting there is the hard part for me as an adult reading it.
Yep.
But still, you're right. That part is of all the third act. That is the most effective part. It's just the getting there that is the hard part for me. But yeah, I don't know.
More Stephen King. Let's do it.
But you're talking about this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
God damn it, I wrote Dead Calm as the classic. It's the Dead Zone. Dead Calm comes later.
The Dead Zone, yes. Another Stephen King adaptation, this one by David Cronenberg, which is wonderful. the combination of these two sensibilities actually really goes well together, in my opinion. You've got King almost kind of going a little bit mainstream here and kind of bringing Cronenberg somewhere towards a place that is a little less Cronenbergian, which is kind of interesting. It does take away a little bit of that kind of that edginess of a Cronenberg movie, but he's still got his pieces in there. He's still got his parts that really are effectively kind of Cronenberg. The story goes that a teacher played by Christopher Walken gets into an accident. He is in a coma for 5 years, and when he wakes up, he has psychic powers. If he touches somebody, he can see things about them. So he touches a nurse, and he can see that at the same time her daughter is in peril and about to die in a fire. He touches somebody else, and he can see the past where this person was rescued during World War II. Well, there's a lot of interesting little episodes that are going on throughout, building up towards this much bigger episode at the end, which is really awesome. A really great finishing set piece with Martin Sheen as a U.S. Senator. I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. I thought maybe this would be, because I don't really remember much of this movie from my childhood. It didn't seem to linger beyond when it was released and have much of a legacy behind it. As so many other, for good, for better, or worse, some of It, for instance, like the original TV version of It, for some reason has a legacy. Maybe it probably doesn't deserve it, but it has one. The other Stephen King adaptations, Maximum Overdrive, still is remembered by people. It's terrible, it's god awful, but it's remembered. People remember it. This one does not linger in the memory like that, even though it did have a TV adaptation later. But I didn't remember this movie at all, and I even forgot it from Cronenberg's resume, which is weird because I'm a big Cronenberg fan. But this is such an interesting mainstreaming of the work of David Cronenberg, and I found that fascinating. Even though he does, like I said, he gets his pieces in there with the way he complicates the plot, and that's really the key aspect of it. The way he uses characters to complicate the plot is very, very much in his style, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But I enjoyed this movie a great deal more than I thought I would.
So when you bring in directors like Cronenberg or De Palma or Kubrick, I don't give a shit about the book. That was part of the problem with both these Pet Sematary movies is they cared about the book and the readers of the book, so they were kind of making the movie for those people. And when you do that, if you don't do it right, you're going to piss everybody off. And even this new one, the critics like it better than the audience does. That's what's so cool about the Dead. I'm going to keep calling it Dead Calm, and it pisses me off. But it's just any other movie, like Pet Sematary 89 is dated. You can just tell this one looks dated, but the Cronenberg-isms keep it weird enough that it kind of stands the test of time, and that's kind of what I like about it.
I liked it too, but maybe not as much as I would have if it had been just a little bit more Cronenberg. Right. I was hoping for a little more gross, weird, mind game type stuff, but it is pretty straightforward, maybe because we know a lot about psychic stuff from that point to this point. Carrie comes to mind. A whole bunch of different things come to mind when it comes to psychic abilities. Even trancers, I think. The head exploding one. Scanners, thank you. There's probably a trancers too.
There is a trancers, yes, that does exist. I'm not sure. I don't know the plot to that one, but it does exist.
I think I like the most Walken's performance out of this, because usually he's just a little too Walken for me. If it's The Prophecy, for example, it's a little too much. But here he's dialed back quite a bit, actually, and he gives some gravity to this character who's psychic, yes, but things are affecting him pretty deeply. After finishing this, I was thinking to myself, this is like the cinematic adaptation of Would You Kill Hitler as a Baby? Because he can see something starting to brew and it's not going to go well. And the question is, does he take that responsibility upon himself to do something, and his decisions really culminate in the end of the film? That's a pretty powerful thing, and the film did a good job of leading out to that and earning that, especially with me knowing who Martin Sheen usually is when it comes to political films. He's the guy saving everyone, or he's the guy that you really want to get behind. Here he's playing the complete greaseball, so I enjoyed this quite a bit, more than I should have, I suppose. I think it's about 2 hours long, too. It doesn't appear that there's a whole lot of fat on it. There's enough credence given to the Brooke Adams character. I'm getting her confused with Maud Adams.
In Dead Calm.
Oh, Jesus Christ. It's your turn to mess one of these things up. But I did find it a little strange that Brooke Adams' character decides that, no matter what, we deserve to have sex after you wake up from your coma.
He deserves it. I don't know.
They'd waited long enough. I think what really makes this work is that I loved the way he treated the initial plot. The way he sets up this serial killer character, and you think, okay, here's the movie. This is where this is going now. It's going to be a kind of a detective thing, and he's going to got a number of suspects and figure out who it is. Nope, that plot's just, it's there, it's gone, and they're on to another thing, and I loved that. That really threw me off the trail of where this movie was going, and I really loved the way they played that out, and especially that one really great Cronenberg touch.
Right.
And that scene is really fantastic.
Yeah, that was really, because I watched it in two different pieces, and that's kind of where I paused it, not kind of feeling like it was almost over. And then when I went to restart, I'm like, well, there's like 45 minutes or an hour left or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's just a great halfway point and going on to a different direction. And I do think, I agree that it's forgotten, but at the same time, I feel like it's referenced a lot. Like the touching and seeing in the future. I feel like I've seen that a bunch since then. I don't know if this is the original movie to do that or book to do that, but it does feel like that
became a trope.
And I think it's I'm guessing it's because of this movie, but I don't know that to be true or not. But
very possible. And I never saw the remake series that had Anthony Michael Hall in the walk-in role. I don't know if it expands upon the book or if it's really one large version of the book, like you suggested, which you would take a book and maybe make it into an entire season or series.
I think just do season personally.
I think they actually set it up where he's kind of following the Stilson character, I believe.
Oh, okay, I see.
So there's a furthering of that plot, I believe, as they expand that out over the series.
And I'll give Tom Skerritt some credit too, playing usually a throwaway character in the officer that we come to hate most of the time in films like this, but he actually has some sympathy for him. He isn't exactly believing of psychic abilities, but he also says, hey, I'm a cop. I got to go on some hunches here. I'm just going to obey a hunch. So Tom Skerritt, usually I don't recommend him for everything, but he's good in this.
It was a really clever piece of casting. And again, it played into that whole thing of the misdirection, because once that plot is done, he's gone. And you're off on the rest of the movie not knowing where you're going, and that's really fantastic.
Yeah, I will say, watching it and not knowing how it was going to end and where they were going to go, I was thinking, today someone would just videotape him, or somehow he would, because he saw what he was going to do. Even if we could all watch what he saw, there's still half the people in this country that be like, so, I'm still voting for that guy. And that's what was so... It really took him holding a baby up while being fired at to really get to lose the election. I think that's the only thing that would really work. And I was wondering where they were going to go.
That's the single greatest Mayor Quimby impression I've ever seen.
But am I not wrong? If people could see what Christopher Walken saw, it wouldn't change anything.
No, there'd still be plenty of people who'd be behind that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could say, at least in this story, in this movie, we know that he was celibate with himself. Because if he touched himself, he would have seen what he did at the end. But he didn't. So he was able to get to his destiny. Now, that there is expert analysis that you can't find on any other podcast.
Every time Josh masturbates, he sees his future.
Excuse me.
Since this is Aunt Bethany's 80th Christmas, I think she should lead us in the saying of grace.
What, dear? Grace! Grace! She passed away 30 years ago.
1989.
Hey, just as a follow-up on that, now, if you don't see your future when you're masturbating, you're doing it wrong. That's all I got to say about that.
I see, 10 minutes of depression.
Well, don't forget shame. Don't forget shame.
And then drowsiness.
Yeah, I guess the real story is being surrounded by potato chips and shame. You're right. Okay, 1989 had a killer week. There's 2 movies that I didn't watch, 4 that I did out of 6. Get the 2 that I didn't out of the way first. One called 84 Charlie Mopic, which is a designation, a job code for a combat cameraman, and it seems to be that it's a fictional story, but played off like it's a real story, following a cameraman and interviewing a bunch of different soldiers as they are in duty, I guess. If either of you seen it.
No.
It was a little weird to even find because where I grabbed it from the Numbers website, it had something different what the actual title was. It didn't even make any sense at first, but...
The 84C Mopic or whatever.
Yeah, it was a little confusing. Also, one that isn't available to watch that I saw, but maybe everyone's dad has a copy of this on his shelf, Cyborg, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Plot goes that a martial artist hunts a killer in a plague-infested urban dump of the future. That kind of dystopian science fiction that's always where you go to Jean-Claude Van Damme first if you're looking for that kind of story.
Is
right?
he the bad guy in that one? He's the cyborg, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a good question. I wish I could tell you because I would have watched it.
I mean, he's pretty much the Terminator, right?
I think
basically.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen that one.
After seeing Bloodsport and the splits and the dancing.
Once you've seen Bloodsport, you don't really gotta just then throw a dystopian future on it.
Right. But let's see. We'll go to the less big ones that I did see. The Dream Team, which is a comedy with Michael Keaton and Christopher Lloyd. How did I not know about this movie until just recently?
Really?
Oh, really? So I watched it for the first time this week, and let me tell you, I enjoyed the shit out of this movie. It's not what you would call like top shelf comedy. We're not saying that this is a groundbreaking venture here, but Michael Keaton and Christopher Lloyd and Peter Boyle and another actor are playing 4 mental patients that get out, not because they're trying to escape, but their doctor tries to take them to the Yankees game, and he ends up getting jumped in an alley as they're making a stop, and so they're loose, and they have to try and get back to the place where they were, all on their own, without many skills, without much money, but only like their neuroses on their back, so to speak. I enjoyed the little ticks of Christopher Lloyd's character. Michael Keaton plays like a hothead in a role that he's very well suited to do. Peter Boyle thinks he's Jesus in this movie and often gets naked.
Stephen Furst, Flounder from Animal House, is the 4th guy.
Thank you. You are correct. And he plays a guy that doesn't really speak in clear sentences, but in coded words, usually about baseball. I actually found myself laughing at this, not like gut busting, but enjoying it with a smile on my face most of the time. As I understand, it's been something that many other people have seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, but I remember wanting to see it a lot because like Beetlejuice and Batman had been out, and this was right in between them, and it was on the video shelves, and it was on HBO for that free preview. My dad wouldn't let me watch it, and I watched it later on, and it's fun. You know, it's multiplicity-ish.
I saw this movie like 50 times as a kid. Like anytime it was on, I'm watching it because I was I was a Keaton fan. Yeah, I was a big Keaton fan at the time, and as a Batman and all that. And I watched anything Keaton. I watched the one where I watched Clean and Sober. Like I watched My Life. Like I was really big.
Oh man,
I was a big Keaton fan, so I watched this movie a lot, and I loved it. You know, it was a really, really fun movie, really funny. So when you're a little kid, this is watching Keaton's blow-ups especially, and then Stephen Furst's very, very tick-laden performance was really fun.
If I'm not mistaken, it's rated R though, right?
That's the thing. It's rated PG-13, but there are 2 F-bombs in it. And so when I caught the second Michael Keaton F-bomb, I said,
they broke the rules.
They broke the rules. But on Amazon, when I rented it, there it was saying PG-13. So I almost had the boy watch it with me because it was a PG-13 comedy with Michael Keaton, and he already knowing him from Batman and Mr. Mom, I wanted to give him more exposure, but alas, I didn't do that. Another one, an Australian film that's basically kind of like Cape Fear, and it's dead calm. It stars Sam Neill and Nicole Kidman, and I think her first major film release, if not one of her first major film releases, and Billy Zane. I knew this poster. It was something that I'd always wanted to watch because for whatever reason I have a memory in my head of my mom saying like, "Oh, that's a creepy movie." Well, she also thought that Cape Fear was the same kind of thing. Cape Fear is a really much better movie than this to me. It's directed by Philip Noyce, though, who's kind of an interesting carpenter, as we like to say. He's done some things that I've liked, a couple of Jack Ryan movies and Salt, which I liked. I don't know if anyone else on this planet likes that, but
I think I did.
Okay, good. There's one, there's two, all right. But this one, it suffers at the hands of Billy Zane because as creepy as he looks and as douchey as he can be, and we've seen him countless times, this is a really weak performance for a supposed homicidal maniac that he is. The film doesn't quite get into why he did what he did to everyone on the boat that he escaped from. The cleverest part of this is how Nicole Kidman and Sam Neill managed to go about their business in two different spots and then reunite. I almost like the puzzle of that way more than the stalking horror aspect of this. And I question some of the decisions this film makes that it begs Nicole Kidman's character to have sex with Billy Zane to somehow win his trust. There's something a little off about that, and I don't know if that's why this movie was somewhat infamous or not.
I mean, the reason I saw the movie is because of Batman Forever, and I thought she was hot in that movie. So I'm like, oh, she's in this movie. Oh, you can see her butt.
It's Al.
But I remember liking it at the time, but again, you're talking to a teenager when I saw it, so I don't really remember.
And saw the future afterwards.
Potato chips and Surge. Mid-90s, right?
What are you doing? Are you a pothead? Are you masturbating?
Who, me?
I never ate. Like, to me, food needs to stay far away.
No. This is unsanitary.
When you're in the middle of, like, debauchery,
just might
that's
go, might
usually
as well go
when
for
you
it.
just say, you know what, let me just, the trifecta, if you will.
You know, the grease from the cheese makes a great lubricant.
No, it doesn't.
He says with experience.
Sounds like you both did. I may never masturbate again.
Anyways, Dead Calm. That exists. But the most important film from '89, at least in my opinion, I think culturally it would seem to be that way too, unless you want to say Pet Sematary.
No, it's this one.
It's this one. Okay, Major League. It's a baseball movie with Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger, Corbin Burnson. Oh gosh, Wesley Snipes, Bob Uecker, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people that would become bigger than who they were at this particular time. Some of them had already been. Except Tom Berenger and Corbin Burnson had done L.A. Law at this time as well. So what I really love about this is, for the most part, the baseball. Like, you've got some actual major leaguers involved. Clu Haywood is played by Pete Vukovich, a former pitcher, and the swings by most players are acceptable to me. I can believe Wesley Snipes is just a fast dude that can go get it. You know, I kind of like that. I love Rick Vaughn's whole demeanor, that demeanor of the steely, mean closer, the guy that throws 100
Especially in
roughly.
the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could throw that hard in the 80s, it was kind of a unicorn thing, not necessarily the mainstay like it is now. Your whole bullpen is full of guys that can throw 105. But there's some humor in this that I really love too, especially with Lou Brown, the manager of the Indians. I never can remember the manager's name, the actor's name, but I really enjoyed the humor of this. I've probably seen this 20 to 25 times in my life. The sequels do not match this whatsoever, but there's a little bit of magic in this one. For
I
me.
like part 2 okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
That line he has immediately after he's invited to be the manager of the Indians, but he's still busy with tires. Yes, that's just such a great. That sets up that character perfectly for the rest of the movie. Teenage version of me actually loves Major League more than any other baseball movie ever. Now, the adult me, of course, knows that Bull Durham is the greatest baseball movie of all time, but
It's up there.
Far
but
and
Major
away.
League,
Far and away the best baseball
Yeah.
movie of all time.
agreed. But Far and Away with Nicole Kidman, not so much. That's the worst baseball movie of all time.
They play baseball
no.
now? I wouldn't put it past them.
I loved this movie as a kid. I watched it a million times, and even more than Dream Team. And Tom Berenger was my hero. I loved Tom Berenger in this role. He was just so perfect. It was like watching the version of the person I hoped Jody Davis was.
Thank you for saying that. Because he's got the same number as Jody Davis, number 7.
And he's slow like
He's
him.
slow like him, and he moves like a turtle out of the
Anytime
batter's
like
box.
Jody Davis was running, I always thought of that.
I will say, of all the actors, his baseball is the worst looking.
It is. The swing.
It's somewhat passable, but not for a movie at least. But yeah, it's the one that's the closest one to. I don't know, but I have like 3 different ways of looking at this movie. As a kid, I always watched edited, so I didn't know it was rated R. So, and it was funny, cleaned up on TV. Then, after seeing that 10, 15 times, watching it rated R, you're like, holy shit, this is a different movie. Then as you get older and everybody's calling it the greatest baseball movie of all time, I started to kind of resent it for a little bit. It's like, okay, it's fine. I like it. It's fun, but come on. It's not even top. Oh, I'd put Field of Dreams ahead of it. I'd put a couple other movies ahead of it, but it's just a fun movie. It's kind of like what Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is to me. It's a movie I go to bed watching because I could start it at any point. I could, I don't have to finish it. It's just a fun, relaxing movie that I just enjoy.
Yeah.
But
the Wayne's World of baseball movies.
A great series of gags, really just funny. They go big and they get really, really funny. The end, it's weird the way this movie it's kind of morally right in some areas, like the way that they treat the character of Serrano and the character of the older pitcher who doesn't like him. That guy, the way he keeps getting his comeuppance throughout is wonderful. That really teaches you a very good lesson that people who act like that get what's coming to them, and then he comes around and he becomes kind of a good guy, and I like that.
if only Best of Enemies had seen Major League.
Exactly. Exactly, a much better version. The owner, but then you'd look at the way it's presaged the coming years of sports with the owners who actually do try to tank to get to the end of the season, the teams that want to move and losing as much as they possibly could to get out of their city. That this movie kind of presaged all of that, which is kind of funny in a way.
And as Cub fans, thank God the Indians didn't do anything with this movie. They let the Cubs just, be the real story, and the Indians were the other team. Even when they were winning, but they were still the other team. They didn't bring Major League into it as much as everybody wanted them to. Charlie Sheen never threw out a first pitch like he probably should have. And I'm very grateful to that as a Cub fan that never happened.
Yeah, if you invited Sheen, you'd invite all of them. You'd have to, almost anyone that was surviving. Maybe even Scott Bakula from the third one or something like that.
You only got to do the first one, but the second one's fun. But again, you're talking to the guy. I watched Major League edited. Then part 2 I saw after that, before I saw the rated R version. So part 2 is kind of like the edited part 1.
Oh yeah, it's one of the first big group as a teenager that was out. Without my parents and everything, a group of 8 or 9 of us went to see Major League 2 and then went to a bowling alley.
I may have seen Major League 2 first, now that I think about it, because I was a big Omar Epps fan. So then when I went back, and now that, you're right, because when I went back and watched the first one, that's Wesley Snipes. He's a huge star. Passenger 57.
Yep, April of 1994.
Jeez. All right, anything else on 89?
That's it.
All right, next week, a week of forgettable new releases after Hellboy, Little Missing Link. That kind of goes together. It's one movie. But Say Anything turns 30 And we're going to take a look at singles and Almost Famous. And I believe Sean pointed out that the Roger Ebert Film Festival is featuring Almost Famous. So that's another reason for us to revisit Almost Famous again. Probably my real favorite movie of all time, as much as I can't let Rocky go. So Almost Famous is. So I'm looking forward to this week for sure.
Now, the question is it Almost Famous or is it Untitled that you like more?
Similar to Lord of the Rings, I don't care. I just like being in the world. So even though there's totally unnecessary scenes, I enjoy them both kind of as one.
Don't worry, I'm the kind of guy that'll sit through an Alien versus Predator movie. I know exactly what you mean.
No, you don't.
Josh, we need to talk to you about self-harm.
In many ways.
Do you have Surge and potato chips?
Surge made a resurgence, so I could recreate the scene, I suppose.
Jesus, don't do that. Before I let you go, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters for supporting the podcast. We'll start with our Key Grip level and Charlie Messing and the Hall of Famer Jason Bryant. And that's just not a name I gave him like Uncle Jeff and Uncle and Cousin Jeff. He really is a Hall of Famer. So, Charlie, I'm not meaning to not put a title on you. If you have a title, by all means, let me know what
Charlie
it is.
may in the future be a Hall of Famer. We just don't know it yet. Maybe if we touch him with our hands, we can find out his future.
Just don't get any potato chip grease on him.
It would be Cheetos for me.
He's not going to shake your hand if you're...
Yeah, if he sees you holding a bottle of Surge.
From now on, I expect very few people will shake my hand.
Our character actors, Cousin Jeff, Christina Cato, and, oh my God, Josh Paul.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Did you just give him a new name?
Oh my God. I don't even think he knows he's still a supporter. But I just forgot who it was. Just like you forgot we do a podcast and that he's giving us $5 a month. Our special effects level, Corey from Ivy Envy and Sarah Morale.
May the Force be with you.
Our associate producer, Jason Mollett.
Everybody has to eat shaving cream once in a while.
And our movie stars, Dave Severs and Uncle Jeff.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to ihatecritics.net/Patreon to get yourself a credit on the show, or click on the PayPal link if you'd rather contribute that way. If you are a Patreon supporter, please update your credit card information if you intend to stay as a Patreon supporter. If not, that's understandable as well, but I just want to let you know, some of you, your cards have expired. And then we have our podcast merch, ihatecritics.net, and then click on the podcast merch link. If there's nothing else, that is our show. We'll see you next week.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. We're the three best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best three friends that anybody can have. I mean the three best friends that anybody can have. That's right, the three best friends.
You actually have time for this, Sean, or do you got to
Sure,
get going?
I'm fine.
All right. The 40-year-old virgin or 13 going on 30?
40-year-old virgin. But I like 13 going on 30.
Josh, you like neither of these, correct?
Correct. But I don't want to waste...
Okay, which number do you like better, 40, 13, or 30?
I better like 40 more than...
Oh, yeah, that's like a month away.
Yeah, good God.
What are you doing for your 40th, anything?
I have no idea. I assume that it won't involve potato chips and pop. Since I'm married, there's obligatory things on birthdays, so in theory.
Well, you're newly married. You're newly married.
Don't listen to this show, honey.
You still have a few years before you go back to the chips. Until someone talks you out of it like you did me. Secret Window, Aliens.
Secret Window for me.
Aliens.
Go Aliens.
I like Secret Window way more than I should.
Fair enough. Flubber, Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
Fuck Flubber. Stand By Me all the way.
I think Robin Williams did. Fuck Flubber.
Lust for Life, Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Agreed. Rat Race, Forrest Gump.
Ugh. Oh my God, my stomach. My friend Melissa really loves Rat Race, so I'm going to go with that one.
I'm just going to have to
both
agree out
garbage.
of principle. I mean,
They're
I
both
just
garbage
don't
movies. So.
Like Forrest Gump at all.
Well, right, but again, this goes back to my when Roger Ebert liked Crash, and he was like, "Well, Deuce Bigelow is so much worse in this movie. How can you say Crash is the worst movie of the year?" Deuce Bigelow wasn't trying to be the best movie of the year. Crash was, almost offensively bad. Deuce Bigelow was trying to be offensively bad, and it succeeded at what it was doing. So, Rat Race all the way.
Yeah.
Avatar, High Fidelity.
High Fidelity.
High Fidelity?
By a lot.
Terminator, Salvation, The Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon.
The Karate Kid 2010, Philadelphia.
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 28 Days Later, Beverly Hills Cop.
Beverly Hills Cop.
Agreed?
Yes, I agree too. Speaking of Crash, Ghost Rider.
It's Crash and Ghost Rider?
Yeah, and the bad Crash, not the Cronenberg one. Cronenberg did the other one, right?
Yeah.
The porno, yeah.
It's Ghost Rider.
Good God, man. Yeah, Ghost Rider.
Use my logic, man. Huh? Use my logic.
I am. Yeah, it has to be Ghost Rider.
Visioneers. I haven't seen that one. A Knight's Tale.
I like Visioneers. But yeah, you guys probably haven't seen that one, so.
I have not. I've seen A Knight's Tale, though.
Did you like it?
Yeah.
Did you like it better than The Three Musketeers from 1993?
Yeah.
Yes.
By a smidge.
I like Knight's Tale.
Did you like the Bryan Adams, Sting
and Rod Stewart?
Good God, no.
Look at me, the man who buys Peter Cetera albums, and then your answer is clearly yes. I like that song.
I can't get it in my head at the moment. So
you want me to sing all three versions of it at once? Because I can.
I feel like if you did, I'd just start thinking of the Robin Hood song. So.
Fair.
The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, or National Lampoon's Vacation, 83.
Fishing with Gandhi.
That is the Hobbit movie I like, and I don't like the Vacation movie, so...
Oh, so we completely split. I guess I haven't seen the Hobbit movie, so maybe we'll just reset altogether. Raging Bull, The Leader of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Raging Bull.
Raging Bull.
Semi-Pro, or Elf.
I just don't like the fans who like Elf, so I'm going to semi-pro. They like it too much. They like it too much.
Yeah.
It's okay to like it, but you like it too much. Elf is not that great.
Okay, I definitely want to put myself in the correct category then. I like Elf, but not too much.
I just really like Favreau. He makes just really watchable movies, even when, I don't know, the Jungle Book's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't change the world or anything, but then...
It's just there.
But then he does something like Chef, that's... Or Swingers, that's just... I mean, he didn't direct Swingers, but he may as well have. The First Avenger, Captain America, or Operation Delta Force 4, Deep Fault?
Captain America.
I've seen that second one, but I'm sure it's Captain America.
Sometimes you don't have to see all the movies to play this game. Of course, now it's saving our choice. Training Day. Oh, it just moved on me. Something versus the Simpsons movie. It's loading. Burn After Reading.
Simpsons movie.
Simpsons movie.
I like Burn after reading a lot, though.
I agree. This will be interesting. Evil Dead 2, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Evil Dead 2.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
It's Evil Dead 2, just because it's my favorite of the three movies. Identity or Little Nicky?
Identity.
Identity.
The worst of the Adam Sandler movies, if that's such a thing. Sleuth, 1972. I have not seen it. Or Shaun of the Dead.
I think I've seen Sleuth, but I don't remember it, so...
Yeah, and I haven't seen that or the remake.
All right. Pollock, I haven't seen that either. Or Shaun of the Dead.
Have you seen Pollock?
I have seen Pollock.
All right. I'm going Pollock.
I will go Pollock as well.
Okay.
Sorry, Shaun of the Dead fans. Being There or Mortal Kombat?
Being There.
And that's the one that you had mentioned. It's Peter Sellers that's in, right? Okay, and it's the political movie that I haven't seen.
Yeah, that's definitely one that needs to be seen.
Someday. Mystic River, Animal House.
Mystic River.
Mystic River.
Gross Point Blank or Too Fast, Too Furious?
Tough choice for me, but I'm going to go Gross Point Blank.
As will I.
I'll go with the Furious movie. Inception, Mary Poppins.
Inception.
Inception.
Tremors, Terminator Salvation.
Which one is Salvation?
Christian Bale, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Worthington.
Tremors.
Not with Kevin Bacon, yeah.
I will take Terminator Salvation.
Tremors is fantastic. All right, last movie. Army of Darkness, The Terminator.
Army of Darkness.
Terminator. Wait.
Army of Darkness.